Okay, everyone, thank you for joining another live question and answer series. As always, if you have a question, please submit them in the comment section below. For the first question, we had a question from our friend named Rachel, and she wanted to know, she had heard that today is a holiday of the trees.
Yeah.
She didn't say in the question when she submitted it, but it's Tu B'Shvat. And she wanted to know what is the significance of the holidays of the trees in Judaism.
It's a minor holiday. It's called one of the four Rosh Hashanahs, and it's called a Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the new year for the tree. And the reason for that is simply because that's the beginning where in Israel, in the climate of Israel, during this time period, that's when the beginning of the trees start budding for the spring. The significance of that is that there's after the winter months, the months of the winter, which correspond to the months of Teves, Shvat, and Adar in the Hebrew months. So when we reach the midpoint in the middle of the winter, so Teves, Shvat, Adar is 3 months, and the midpoint between Teves, Shvat, and Adar, which is the 15th day of Shvat, that's when we say that it's the beginning of the potential for the spring. The spring doesn't reveal itself till a month and a half later, the beginning of Nisan, Chodesh Aviv. But the potential of the spring begins in this time period. So spiritually, this represents a time period where there's a very strong koyach, a very strong energy in the world that's brought down for potential, where things are not yet formed, they haven't yet been revealed in a particular form. That's already occurs in the spring, where things are revealed, whether it's trees or in the natural world, things are revealed. Hence, animals come out of the hibernation, animals that hibernate, which means that things are already becoming revealed. In the midpoint of Shvat is where things are potentially revealed. And because things are just in potential, there's much more possibility. It's the possibility of all possibilities, the potential of all potentials in this time period. So it's marked as a day of significance and a day to reflect in our own personal lives of what is our potential and how we should start actualizing ourselves. So we have the fruit of the tree, which is our actions and our thoughts and our words, should be revealed in a consistent way with the tree itself.
We had a question from Rebecca. This was from last week, but she wanted to know, she had seen that many women, Jewish women that she had met in her life, although we've covered this question a couple months ago, but Rebecca had a question. She's seen many Jewish women who cover their hair in different ways, and she wanted to know what was the significance of covering the hair.
Hair is a very interesting part of the body. The hair of a person, whether male or female, represents a conduit of energy. It's like an outgrowth of the body. That means that there's something internal that's being expressed in the external, like hair or also nail in the body. The hair itself is, the head hair is considered Moises HaMoichin, which is like access of intelligence, which means that it's coming from the inside and it's being revealed externally. And in this form of hair, there are various types of hair, even head hair. There's hair of a male, there's hair of a female, there's hair of a child, there's hair of an older person. In the Torah itself, we find certain times that hair is considered sacred. For example, the hair of a Nazir, a Nazirite, someone that becomes a Nazir, someone that refrains from wine and refrains from any contact with the dead for a certain period of time. Also, they have to grow their hair, and their hair is considered holy, sacred. At other times, you find that hair is considered an erva, something that has to be cut and protected and covered over. So the basic understanding of hair is that hair has a lot of potential, and it has a lot of potential of spiritual energy. it also has an element of that it's an expression of the person. It's a revealing of the person through their hair. So therefore, because hair is energetically a very high level, this, especially for a married woman, this has nothing to do with, and we don't practice this with an unmarried woman, but with a married woman, the idea of covering hair is to keep that part of the body sacred for the husband. That it's a sacred part of the body that's only being revealed to the husband. So specifically when the husband is intimate with his wife, then the hair has to be specifically, like the body has to be uncovered. That's because that's that intimate moment of connection. But just like other parts of the body that should be hidden or covered over, so it should not so much covered over so other people shouldn't see it, but more that it should be protected because it's a sacred part of the body that belongs to you and only to someone that you're intimate with. The same thing also is with hair, and therefore hair is covered for a married woman, because the nature of the hair changes once a person becomes married or becomes intimate, because before that the hair was more didn't have that same connotations, the same sensual connotations. Only after marriage, when there's an intimate relationship between spouses, does that hair also become something that's particularly reserved for the spouse.
We have a question from our friend named Elisheva, and she says at night before sleeping, she forgives everyone, as everyone does. But what if someone hurt a person physically and emotionally, but takes no responsibility for their actions, and so doesn't ask for forgiveness? How do you get past that to forgive?
By giving forgiveness to another person, there's two elements here. One element is one part of this conversation is your relationship to the other person, and the other part of the conversation is their relationship to you. If a person doesn't hurt somebody and doesn't ask forgiveness, then you don't have to forgive them technically, because they never asked forgiveness. They're not trying to repair this relationship, but you could. And it's healthy to do that, which means that even though the other person doesn't ask forgiveness, the idea of mechila, slicha, all has in Hebrew are related to the word chal or lach or mchal, which is words that represent like liquid or movement or something that's not solid. Mechila means you become malleable, you become easy, you become rachakana, you become more fluid. So that's really a question of, it's your own prerogative. If someone hurts you, even if it's physically, and you want to hold on to that hurt, and you don't want to let it go, then you don't have to give mechil to the other person. Of course, if the person asks mechil, this is a different situation. The person asks forgiveness, but if the person didn't ask forgiveness and you just want to give forgiveness, then it's beneficial for you. It's not only beneficial for the other person, but it's beneficial for you to live that way, to be a rach kakana, to be easy and let it slide, let it move. So that's really your choice, whether you forgive the other person or not. But it's a choice that we should make, that it's a correct choice to do that.
We have a question from Catherine, and she wants a follow-up question. Why do men not have to cover their hair?
Men do cover their hair. Men wear a yarmulke, they have to cover their hair. It's just a matter of how much they have to cover their hair. Men and males and females both cover their hair. It's just a matter of how much of the hair is covered. So there is something that's reserved also for males that have to cover their hair. It's a different type of hair, but a different type of covering, but also males have to cover their hair on some level. That's not the simple reason why men wear yarmulke, but covering over the head, but it does cover the hair.
We had a question from Alex last week, also a question from last week we didn't get to, and he wanted to know, how do we know that we're supposed to say a blessing on the Shema that we say at night? It says that we shall say the Shema in the morning and at night, but we say some type of a blessing that's specific for Shema at night, whereas we're not davening. In the morning we're praying, so we can put blessings in before the Shema. But how do we know that we're supposed to say an actual blessing at night before sleep?
No, we actually don't say a blessing on the Shema before we go to sleep. we say during prayer, during Ma'ariv, there's a blessing. There's one blessing we say in the morning before Shema, and then there's two blessings that we say in the evening before Shema. The simple reason is because Shema is a mitzvah, and every mitzvah that we say, according to the sages, before we do the mitzvah, we make a blessing. So there's a blessing, there's a birchas krishma that's connected to the Shema, and it's so integral to Shema itself that according to certain Rishonim, that's actually part of the mitzvah of reading Shema is also the same with the blessing. So the blessing is like we make a blessing over tefillin, we make a blessing over Shabbos, whenever there's a mitzvah, there's a birchas mitzvahs, we make a blessing over the mitzvah to say that mitzvah. So we do say it with a blessing.
We have a question from Levaya, another follow-up question to this, and she says, but men cover their hairs with yarmulkes even before they get married. So how does that apply to the concept that I thought Rav spoke from before?
Yes, so I just want to say it like this. First of all, this is a very big conversation. There's a book that I wrote about it, not to plug the book, but there's a book, it's called Upsharon, which talks about all the different types of hair, male hair, female hair, child hair, adult hair, hair of a Nazir that has to go with long hair, and hair of a Levite that has to completely be shaved. Why certain times in the Torah it says the person should go with long hair, certain times in the Torah it says the person should go with no hair. Sometimes they have to cut off the hair of the entire body, sometimes parts of the hair you're not allowed to cut. Specifically, you're not allowed to cut, sometimes the hair of a beard. So there's various different types of hair, various different types of, energetically, there are very different types. And male and female hair are different. There's a difference between male and female hair. Incidentally, when we're talking about female covering of the hair, there were sources that suggested that female women should also cover their hair even before they got married. According to some commentaries, it's a leniency that women, before they get married, do not cut their hair. They do not cover their hair. Women should not cut their hair completely. That's also another issue. While men specifically should have shorter hair, women specifically should have longer hair, because women represents the molecule, like the energy of the universe, and therefore it's an expression of that life force. Their hair is, but their hair should be covered over because it's connected to din. Men represents another form of hair, therefore their hair should be cut shorter and also less intense, so therefore it doesn't need such a strong covering.
We have a question from our friend named Martin, and he wants to know, what do non-Jews have to do to deserve the world to come? Is it enough for them to follow the Noahide laws? Are they permitted to study Kabbalah?
So there's a few different questions.
Different questions, yeah.
So the first question is that the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah that Antoninos asked Rabbi Yehuda if he has a portion in the world to come, if he has Chai Olam Haba, he has a portion in the world to come. And Rabbi Yehuda said that yes, every righteous Gentile in the world that follows Shev Mitzvahs B'nai Noach and believes in the oneness of Hashem and practices this connection with Hashem has a portion in the world to come, and they can study Torah that's connected to Shev Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, certainly. And the Gemara also says, our sages tell us, that it can be that person can reach a very high level of studying Torah. And like Tosis in the commentaries explain, this is regarding to the Torah learning that's connected to their mitzvahs. Now, since Shev Mitzvah Noach, the Noahide laws, is connected to the idea of believing in the oneness of Hashem, and not only believing conceptually with faith, but to actually Leida Ulahaman, to believe and to understand, truly know the Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem, so they can certainly learn issues that's connected to the Seidah Torah, the Kabbalah or Chassidus that are connected, that reveal the oneness of Hashem, because that's a mitzvah on them as well, the mitzvah on the entire world, to understand the oneness of Hashem, and to not only to believe in the oneness of Hashem, to actually experience it and to know it and to really understand it. And that's the chelik of the Torah that they should study, the connection to the Torah that they should study.
We have a question from a friend named Richard, and he wants to know, why does the Gemara mention not to extract teeth? He said that he recently extracted his teeth, the wisdom teeth, and still feels different. Is this spiritual, or just him obsessing and psychological about the Gemara?
Listen, the idea of a lot of things that are connected to refuah, a lot of things that are connected to medicine, which Chazal talk about in times of the Gemara, we say that nishtano itin, things have changed. So it could be the bodies are different, or the medicine is different. We have different understandings, and some. If it's suggested by a medical professional, and you get 2-3 opinions, and they all say that in order for you to live a healthier life, you have to extract the tooth, you have to take out your wisdom teeth, then you have to do it, because we have to live the way Hashem didn't. Hashem gave the permission to heal in the way that we understand healing is today. Why a person feels something maybe missing in their life is because something physically, something that was connected to them was lost. They had something physical in their life, in their body, that's all of a sudden not there. So they feel that hole, and we have to exchange that emptiness feeling for a spiritual emptiness feeling, so we can use that as a catapult to get us closer to Hashem, to feel like maybe an existential emptiness that we want to feel. We feel a chesed, something is missing, so we want to feel connected to Hashem to bring us that wholeness. But if whatever modern medicine understands to be the way things have to be done, that's we have to follow them.
We have a question that just came in. They want to know, how can one know if one has overcome their astrological influences by Avodat Hashem? Probably they're talking about Mazal, and that
right.
Jews are above Mazal.
How do you know this? I would say very simply, if you wake up in the morning and the sun is shining and you say today's going to be a good day, or you wake up in the morning and it's raining and you say today's going to be a lousy day, or it's freezing and you say, oh, I can't get out of bed, then you know that you're affected by the mazel, which means you're still affected by the environment. Whatever is being presented to you, you're in the effect of your life. But if you wake up in the morning with the same enthusiasm, you get up like a lion every single morning, whether it's snowing, raining, or the sun is shining, with the same chayas, with the same life and the same exuberance to wake up and to serve Hashem in the next morning, then you know that you're beyond the mazel. So I think you have to ask yourself, how do you live your life day to day?
You also had a book written recently on the times and mazels. And
correct. It's called The Spiral of Time. In that book we talk about that issue as well, how to live like a tum. Tam means tam mishmil Hashem lekecha. The Gemara says in Psachim that tam Hashem lekecha, you should be whole. Whole means that you're beyond the mazel. Whole means that you're not affected, but you're the effector. And a person's whole has wholesomeness.
We had a question from Jason, and he wanted to know that growing up he didn't know about reincarnation, but after studying deeper parts of the Torah, he had seen that and was pleasantly surprised to see that reincarnation is a part of Judaism. What he didn't understand is, how could there be so many Jews who don't know that there's reincarnation as part of Judaism, and on the other side, how do we know that reincarnation is a part of Judaism?
The first part of the question, how many people don't know, is how many people don't know that if he has a chelik kalam al mamash. How many people don't know that we're born with a soul? It's part of Yerushalayim Laviseinu. That it's a soul that we received from our ancestors, from Ram Yitzchak Yaakov. Unfortunately, not everyone's educated. So that's not really a question. How come we don't know? So a lot of people don't know a lot of things. You can't. The not knowing is not proof. We say that we didn't see is not a proof. Not know is not a proof. Now the question becomes, how do we know that it is part? So this we have a Messiah, we have a tradition from it's mentioned in the Zohar, it's mentioned in Sefer Boyer, from the many early Svarim, Sefer Kabbalah, which speaks about that there was a Messiah. There's a tradition that Jews believed in a form of reincarnation. And if you look in the 10th century, 11th century, 12th century, in that period of time, you'll see that some of the Rishonim, some of the Goyim, even Rab Saadia Gaon, some of them talk about this idea of Gilgul and reincarnation, and some argue for it and argue against it. But the way Reb Chazdoi Kreskes writes about this in Or Hashem, one of the great Rishonim, he writes that according to Seichel, according to the logic, you don't have to say that there's reincarnation. There's other ways to understand the universe. However, im Kabbalah hin iskabel, if this is the tradition, he's going to accept it. And the Mukabbalim say, like the Ramban and all his Talmidei Ramban, Nachmanides, believed that this is part of the Messiah. It's not, there wasn't something that they created, but it's something that we always believed in. This is part of the Messiah from Sinai. This is part of the tradition that goes back to Sinai, which is generally given over more in secretive, like all the Seidos of Torah, all the secrets of the Torah, were given over privately from teacher to student. And it finally became revealed during this time period in the 10th, 11th, 12th century. Became finally revealed, and then we have finally the written word by the Holy Arizal, which documented by Rav Chaim Vital, a sefer. It's called Shar HaGilgulim, the Gates of Reincarnation. Sefer HaGilgulim, which explains this entire process. What's interesting to know historically is that the Kabbalah, the Kabbalists always said this is a tradition that goes back. Some of the philosophers, like the Sefer Ikrim and Sadi Gon, argue against reincarnation, saying that it's not part of. It doesn't have to be. It's logically, it doesn't have to be true. Kabbalah never said that it was logically true. They weren't saying that the reason why we believe in reincarnation is because logically it makes sense in this world. They're saying because that's part of the Messiah. It's part of the tradition. Now we actually know that there's a book called Josephus, which he documents different groups of Jews that lived during the Second Temple period, and he talks about a group of Jews that believed in reincarnation. So we know that there was always groups of Jews that were more connected to the Seidos Torah, more connected to the inner teachings of the Torah, that had this secret doctrine of reincarnation that only became revealed in a time when, like we said, in the 12th, 11th century, with the revealing of Sefer Yetzirah and Sefer Azar, where all these things became revealed. But we see already that it's clear that there was a very old tradition, which we believe goes back to Sinai. Just like it speaks about Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead, or Gan Eden, Gehenim, all these concepts are not mentioned clearly in the Torah. Gan Eden is not mentioned clearly in the Torah, paradise, and Gehenim is not mentioned clearly in the Torah, Tchias HaMesim is not mentioned clearly in the Torah. There's allusions to these ideas, but it's nothing is clear, because there was a whole Torah that was given over orally. There's the written Torah, the Torah Shabbat, and then there's the oral Torah, which is the Messiah, that was given over orally and was documented throughout the periods of time when the sages understood by divine intuition when those things should become revealed into this world. So that's the same thing also with reincarnation. Reincarnation is not a logical conclusion of life, because bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people. Therefore, we must say that there's a past life, and therefore that's the reason for reincarnation. The reason why Jews believe in reincarnation, because this is part of the Messiah. This is the Kabbalah tell us this is part of the Messiah's Torah, part of the tradition of the Torah that goes back to Sinai.
We have a question again from Catherine, and she wants to know that today was a lunar red moon eclipse. It was also Tu B'Shvat. It is Jewish understanding that the red moon on a Jewish festival has a message from God. What was the message from this eclipse, and is there a message from God that there's red moons? I've heard that also, that there's red moons is some type of a message.
Not for us. The message is not for us. Eclipse of the sun is a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse?
A lunar.
Oh, lunar eclipse. Oh, the moon was not...
The moon was red.
I thought it was red. It was eclipse or it was red?
A red moon on a Jewish festival.
It was eclipse?
It was a red moon eclipse.
Oh, it's a partial eclipse?
It would be red with eclipse. Maybe
Not sure.
Partial eclipse, yeah.
Anytime there's an eclipse in the moon, we have to ask ourselves internally, what are the things in our lives? The Gemara mentions 4 different things in our lives that we don't show respect, or certain things. We have to think about that. But it's always, anything that happens in the natural world is a time to reflect on our lives. Specifically on the 15th day of Shvat, I'm not sure what the connection is, but...
Another question that we didn't get to from last week, from Gershon, he had wanted to know, where does the concept of giving something called the pidyon nefesh come from, where you give money to a tzaddik, to a righteous person?
The whole idea of asking a righteous person to pray for you, and this idea of giving something to the tzaddik, is actually, there's roots of this in the Gemara. The Gemara says that if a person is sick and they need a blessing for healing, they should bring a dar on the Talmud Chacham. They should bring a gift to the Talmud Chacham, and the Talmud Chacham, the righteous one, the sage, we'll pray for that person. So the Michal Zlotchever, in the beginning of the Chassidic movement, when this became a very prominent practice, when a person would come to a Rebbe or to a Tzaddik and ask them to pray for them, and they would give them a pidyon nefesh, they would actually give them also some money. So the Michal Zlotchever writes that the purpose of the money was, so it becomes like a two-way investment, so to speak. So the soul, it's like soul wants to pray for you. Yeah, you ask someone, please do me a favor, pray for me. Okay, that's a nice thing. I want to pray for you. But if the person gives something to them, then you owe them something, and then it's physically the physical transaction that makes this person connected to the other person. So therefore, the prayer becomes much more effective, and the person actually prays with much more kavanah. So it's not when you pray for someone that you're invested in their well-being, then it's almost like you're praying for yourself. And no one pray. Most people, the highest prayer that they pray is the prayers they pray for themselves, because that's really that's relevant to them. So that idea of the exchange of money creates that relationship between the mashpia and the makabel, between the receiver and the giver. Again, which the roots of this idea is actually mentioned in Gemara. The Gemara mentioned this already, that you bring a dar l'talmid chacham, you bring a gift to a talmid chacham. So you're actually physically giving them something, so that you can create this relationship. And when they pray for you, but they're praying for themselves already at that time.
We had a question last week, and I have to apologize if the person's watching, because I don't remember the name. But we had a question that came in last week that we didn't get to, and they wanted to know, how do we know that it's okay to drink alcohol in Judaism? The questioner had asked, it seems as though there's proof not to drink alcohol from the sons of Aaron and from the Nazareth. It seems as though the best thing to do is not drink. So how do we know that drinking alcohol is
no, there's shisui yain. There's two things. There's getting drunk, which is not a positive thing, which is true. We find from the children of Aaron. That's getting drunk. That's shisui yain. But we know that eino mishir lo yain. We know that we don't say shir only with salt, with wine. In the Beis Hamikdash, there was nisach yain. There was the pouring of the libation of wine, which means that the carbon, every offering actually had some wine. Wine was understood to be a festive type of drink. And it had a festive type of experience. And the idea really of the drinking of the wine is to create a tikkun for the chet etzadas. The chet etzadas, the sin of the story of the eating of the tree of knowledge, according to one opinion, was that it was a geffen. It was wine. The Chava gave wine to drink to Adam, and they drank wine. And it says, the Arizal writes that Noach tried to do a tikkun, therefore he planted a vineyard, and he wanted to create a tikkun, but unfortunately he failed in that way on his level, and he wasn't able to create a tikkun, and he became drunk, and we know the rest of the story. But from then on, we have to remember Shabbos with wine. And when we make Kiddush, for example, you'll see, you say Savri Maranan, you say, listen, my masters, and some people say L'chaim. Or when a person drinks wine and they want to give a toast, they say L'chaim, to life. What's the root of that? Because we're saying L'chaim L'mavis, it should be to life and not to the opposite. Because originally wine brought to drunkenness, and drunkenness brought to eating of the tree of knowledge. And the descent into a state of drunkenness. And we're saying that now we're going to drink wine in a holy way, in a festive way, where it's going to be l'chaim v'le'lamav. It's going to be to life. Therefore we say, Saviron, and listen to my masters, pay attention, look what we're going to do. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to create a tikkun for this. We're not going to drink wine and get drunk. We're not going to drink wine and go and become, senseless. But we're going to drink wine in a healthy way, in a holy way, just to bring joy, and not to cross that boundary between joy and drunkenness. That's why we say l'chaim, to life.
We had a question a few weeks ago, and again I forget the name, but the questioner had asked that, how do we know, he had heard that when the Mashiach comes, or when the Messiah comes, that there's going to be people who ride on the backs of the wings of eagles. And he said, how do we know that that's true? And he also had asked, is it possible that that's an airplane?
It says, ask him on come from the shore. It's a passage that says, I'll carry it on the wings of eagles. Is it possible that it's an airplane? It's not impossible. I'm not going to say it's not. Who knows? We don't know. The Rambam says everything that's going to happen about Mashiach, in the times of Mashiach, we don't know. It's up to, it says it doesn't bring a person to Yer Shamayim. It doesn't bring a person to the fear of heaven or to Avos Hashem, the love of God, if a person thinks about these things. When it happens, it'll happen. So we'll find out. You want to say it's an airplane? It's an airplane. Whatever it is, let's just get there.
We had a question from Levaya, and she wanted to follow up about the hair questions that we had from before. And she said that it seemed that, according to what the Rav said, that Nazarites, Nazirim, they become more female-like by growing out the hair, according to what the Rav had said about growing out the hair from those places. And also she wanted to know more about hair, that it seems, on a separate note, it seems that a very learned man can read a person from their hair.
Yeah. No, this says in the Zohar, in the Parshas Nasai, that a person, that there's chachma, there's wisdom in the person's hair. There's like I said, there's different types of hair. In very, very loosely, the difference between a Nazir and a Levi and a Kohen. A Kohen has to go, Levi has to go to cut the hair completely. Levi, in the times of the Torah, even a Kohen had a very short haircut. The Kohen Gadol used to take a haircut once a week. Because they had a very short hair. And the Nazir went with long hair. And the very basic difference, you want to say it's a feminine or masculine quality. It's not male or female. But long hair represents the ishki afliya. When the Torah talks about a Nazir, it's a person that does something, a maisa pella, something, a wondrous thing, something that's abnormal, someone that separates himself from this world, someone that's doesn't represent the order of the world, someone that's different, lives a separate life, a life of pella. And the world of the Levi and the Kohen is Talmud Shel Shachar and Talmud Shel Ben Abayim. The world of the Kohen and Levi actually represents very much the order of creation. In the Mishkan, in the Beis HaMikdash, there was service. In the morning you did this every single day. In the morning we brought the same one offering, in the evening we brought this next offering. Every single day was the exact same routine. Which means the Levi and the Kohen, let's say, represents the world of routine and order. So much so that, according to one measure, that's the most important verse in the Torah. Why? Because it represents the order of things. Every single day you do the exact same thing. That's the order of the universe. That's the world of the Kohen. And the Nazir represents the out of the order, the extraordinary. And another way of saying it is that the Nazir represents the poetry of this world, and the Kohen and the Levi represents the prose. One is the linear, and one is more the cyclical. So that's also reflected in here. For the Kohen, that represents the order and the regimen of the morning and the evening, and every single day is the exact same thing. They actually have to cut their hair very short. And the Nazir, which represents more the poetic, if you want to call it more the feminine, more the cyclical type of consciousness, therefore went dafka, specifically with long hair. And the long hair was considered sacred. So there's, like I said, there's different types of hair and different ways of how you're wearing the hair and what it represents. And really, there's different types of quality of that type of hair, and it depends a lot on the consciousness of the person, and specifically, even also, and more specifically, in the types of hair of who's wearing that hair, and where in the body is that hair. And there's difference between hair in certain parts of the body versus hair in other parts of the body, and every type of hair has a different type of quality.
The question that came in.
Maybe you should send a link to the book so people should understand this, because it's a little complicated, this topic.
Sure.
Yeah.
We had a question from Catherine, and she wants to know: is Elijah still supposed to announce the fact that there is going to be a prophet, announce the arrival of Mashiach, of the Messiah? And if so, to whom is he going to announce this? Is it going to be privately or publicly to everyone? If publicly, is it possible it could be done through the internet?
Again, it's the same question about the eagle's wings. It's possible that maybe the whole purpose of the invention of the internet is so Mashiach should be announced. There was Chassidim used to say that the purpose of newspapers, this is before, the purpose of newspapers was that newspapers should tell us that Mashiach came. That's the purpose. That's why newspapers are created. So we can say Kol Shekin, this is a Kal V'chomer reference. Certainly, this is true. That maybe the whole purpose of the internet is to reveal Achdus Hashem. That's clear. To reveal those oneness of Hashem, and to herald in the era of Mashiach. So, yeah, I'm not opposed to that idea. I can see it working.
So Elijah will.
I didn't say will. I said it's possible.
But he will announce it publicly.
Yeah, of course. That's the whole idea. It'll be public. Yeah.
We had a question. There's a story in the prophets that Elisha, in English also, that Elisha, when after he was dead, that there was a person who was burying someone else, and the body fell into the pit and touched Elisha's grave and came back to life. How is that not? What the person wanted to know is, how is that not? I don't know, similar to worshiping the dead, and how is that? Why is that to be worshiping the dead? How is that possible? That
you're asking, how is it possible, or why is it worshiping the dead?
The question that he had asked was, how is that not, worshiping the dead? But I'm guessing.
What do you mean the dead? We're not worshiping Elisha. You're saying that basically the Gemara learns from that story. Our sage learned from that story that you have to bury a tzaddik next to a tzaddik. That's the conclusion of the story, which means that just like in life, a person that's a tzaddik is usually, it's easier for a tzaddik to exist next to other tzaddikim, just like, because every person is affected by their environment and affects their environment. So a person that's surrounded by the people that have the same it's easier for them. It's more conducive for them to articulate who they are when they're surrounded by people that are similar. Like the Rambam talks about this. The Rambam in Hilchos Deis talks about that a person should live in a society that's consistent with his ideals. Because if you're living in a place that's inconsistent, maybe it's a bigger avoida to transform the people around you, but it's easier if you're living in a place where people are of similar kind. So saying also a tzaddik, after a person passes on, we say that the person that passes on, there's a residue of life force that still exists with the tzaddik. And therefore, if something comes into contact with this tzaddik, this inconsistency with who they were during this life, this thing will be ejected. That's what it means. This thing will be thrown out of their presence. It's like two types of mismatched. I don't know, let's say you have two pieces of magnet, they're both the same, and that pushes aside. That's what it means. It means when they buried a Russia next to a tzaddik, the Russia sparked up and was ejected from that presence of the tzaddik. That's what it represents. But it's not worshipping in any way. What's the worshipping of this? The person that passed on?
I have a question from Martin. Martin had read the Rav's book, the Jewish Book of Life After Life.
Yeah.
But he's not clear about a certain point. Does a person's personality, who they are right now in this life, does that survive death? Or if someone is reincarnated, do they return with a new personality in order to fix the points, to fix those aspects of the soul that they couldn't work on before, but with a new personality? Or if the personality itself of the person still survive along with the reincarnation of the soul?
So you have to divide that question like this: the personality of the self, which means the person in this present life after 120 survives. How much of the personality survives? It depends how much eternity the person experienced during life, how much mitzvahs, how much positivity they did during life. That's how much a person exists. That personality, which is called really the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of a person, survives not in another body. It survives outside the body. It doesn't reincarnate. That part exists within Gan Eden. After a person passes on, that person goes into paradise. That personality, it's like the individual memory of the person becomes part of the collective memory. What returns back into the next body is elements of the soul that were not revealed in the past life. So it's a different personality. So they're both true. These two statements are true. The personality survives death fully, or hopefully fully, as much as a person lives fully. That's how much fully they'll survive. And simultaneously, there are parts within our consciousness, within our soul, that we have no connection with, we didn't tap into. Those parts of the soul will come back into another person with a new personality. And the same thing, that person will work out their tikkun in their own life. And that personality will go back into Gan Eden, go back into paradise.
We have a question. First of all, just Jessica had asked for the link for the book that we spoke about before. What was the book again for the?
It's called. There's two versions. One is it's called Upshur. There's Upshur. You look on. You try to find it. It's the newer version.
We have a question from our friend named Shmuel Nussbaum. And he wanted to know how the Rav is connected with Rav Morgenstern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Where that connection? We saw that the Rav is very connected through pictures and things. And there's been a lot of questions about the connection.
I'm not sure how to answer the question. I'm very close to Rav Morgenstern for many years. I don't want to say a friend. That's a strange word to use, but I'm very friendly with him. And when I go there to Israel, I spend time with him a lot. Does that answer your question?
Sure. We had a question last week. This one, also I'm forgetting on the name.
Yeah.
But he wanted to know, with Purim coming up, there's obviously different takes on drinking, but just very simply, I think the point of the question that he was asking was, the point is obviously to lose a person's sense of good and bad. Does that have to be done specifically through wine, or is it possible to use other substances to get there?
The answer to the second question is it has to be specifically wine. That's the mitzvah, l'psumei. It has to be l'psumei ad l'yada. But the idea of, again, it goes back to this whole conversation about wine in general, which was a mishta yayin. That was the whole story of Achashverosh and Haman and the whole beginning of the downfall. And the whole narrative begins with a feast of wine, specifically wine. And we're doing a tikkun for wine. We're doing a rectification for the wine that brought about, God forbid, the possibility of death, to the wine that brought about salvation and hope. So we're transforming that same yayin, the same particular wine. But the idea is not to lose our awareness. Ad lo yada doesn't mean that you lose your awareness between good and bad. That's just drunk and silly. Ad lo yada means until you reach a point of beyond awareness between the difference between good and evil, which means most time we're aware on a conscious level and on a mindful level we're making a distinction between this is good and this is something that's evil. And ad lo yada means we reach a point of ad lo yada. We reach a point that's beyond awareness. It's just like, you know that you don't put your hand in fire because it's going to burn. It's not a yediyah. It's not an awareness of your mind. It's not a seichel. Every child, once they burn their hand once, knows that you don't put your hand in the fire. You're repelled. It's automatic. The same thing also, our working definition of what is good and evil has to be in such a way that we stay connected to goodness, to life, from a place that's even beyond the us, even beyond awareness, beyond conscious awareness. That's what we're trying to reach. We're not trying to reach a place that we don't know, and we can make a mistake that evil is good and good is evil. God forbid.
For our last question, Catherine wants to know, is there still such a thing as a mamzer? If so, what is the quality of that soul that is different from a regular soul?
There is a possibility of mamzer. There is a possibility. I don't want to say when this happens, because you have to speak to a competent Paisek to figure out situations, because today there's situations where someone could technically be a mamzer, but you can see that they weren't really married, they weren't married, there wasn't a get, there was a get. It's very complicated. I wouldn't go around calling anyone a mamzer until you're 100% sure. And that has nothing to do with the person's soul. That has to do with the person's body. The person's soul even is Mamzer Talmid Chacham can be bigger than a Kohen Gadol. It means that the person's soul can be in a very high level. It means that they have a challenge physically of being a Mamzer. But in terms of the soul, they can reach the highest possible level. But you shouldn't call anyone a Mamzer or think that anyone's a Mamzer.
Thank you everyone very much for joining. If everyone holds on a little bit, there will be a shir on the upcoming parsha this week in just another couple of minutes.